everybody, and welcome to another instalment of The High Road. My name's Noel C. Blundell, and we're here today with a very special guest who's a local fella, a family man, a father, an owner-operator of business, and a student. Dan O'Shea, welcome, mate. How are you?
Thanks, Noel. It's good to be here. It was a bit of an honour to get a text from you, and I jumped on it pretty quickly to come and join you on the podcast. So.
Thank you very much. We're privileged to have you here. Well, I'm solo today. Remy's out saving the world or doing something. I'm not really sure what he's up to.
He's not here to show me up.
Yeah, well, you know, some might say that's a good thing. Some might say that's a bad thing. We don't really know. But he's won't be with us today, unfortunately. He'll be cast in the role of audience.
Very good. No, he's a good man, Remy, and if I can articulate myself half as well as what Remy does, I'll be a happy man.
I think you'll be fine. Now, I was going to say, you're a local fella, you're a family man, a father, an owner-operator of a business, and a student. How do you fit that all in?
Not very well, some might say.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
It's interesting. It's obviously a time management challenge.
Yeah.
Obviously studying the degree, I'm at the tail end of that, so about 6 months of a full-time study, so I'm now classified as a full-time student. That's been probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, if I'm being frank.
Full-time or the degree course?
The degree course.
Yes,
so I've only
absolutely.
switched to full-time in the last sort of 3 months, just as a way to get it knocked over. From a time management perspective, there's not a lot of margin for error. Yep. As you mentioned, we've got 4 young kids.
Yes.
A business, and trying to be a husband and trying to have time for myself at the same time. It doesn't always work, and I know it's not sustainable, but there's a means to an end. And about mid next year, I should have the degree knocked over, and some new horizons will open up.
Fantastic. So I'd imagine that you would run a lot of diaries and things along those lines and keep it pretty structured as much as you could, yeah?
There is a schedule. There's a time management model that that really resonates with me. It's actually a quadrant model. So I focus on the top 2, so identifying tasks that are important but not urgent.
Yep.
So if we're doing tasks that are important and urgent, cortisol goes up, we become a little bit stressed and we do not do our best work. So trying to be organised enough to identify those tasks before they become urgent.
Urgent, yep.
Yep. And that was taught to me, I think, in my first year of study, and it's something that's really helped me along the way, just with organisation and being able to do your best work.
That's a great idea. Yeah. So therefore, I would imagine, Dan, that procrastination isn't a problem for you.
Yeah, no, there's no... it is a problem for me.
It's a problem for all of us.
But I'm aware of it.
Yeah, good.
So self-awareness is huge.
Yep.
And, you know, I think I tell myself that I'm 50% dumber when I'm stressed.
Yeah, okay.
So trying to put strategies in place that avoid that or minimise the impact of that. I don't think avoiding stress is actually possible.
Well, in certain degrees, a high-level stress, I think, is avoidable. We can deal something like that. But, of course, stress is a mechanism that gets us motivated to move forward, you know. We have to have some level of stress in our lives.
It gives us some purpose, doesn't it?
I think, I think some people run a bit higher levels of stress than really necessary, and it can be detrimental in the long run.
Guilty.
Well, and also I did a thesis in procrastination and basic psychological need, actually. And one of the things that came out of my thesis study was that procrastination is used by a lot of people as a motivational tool.
Yeah.
So they postpone things until the last minute, and that's when they do their best work under pressure.
I see people operate that way, and I admire them. And I guess I've seen elements of that within myself that I know if I've only got one day till something is due, there's no time to procrastinate.
Yes.
Whereas if you're working on something which I often do, I was working on an assignment this morning that's due in 3 weeks, and I'm getting ready to wrap it up. But I know in the back of my mind that I could probably push that back and not work on that and do something else.
Yes.
So there is, I've left the door open for procrastination to sneak in, where people that have that approach where they leave it to the last minute.
They wouldn't even start it.
Well, once it's the night before, you can't procrastinate. You've just got to sit down and do it.
Yes, and it's not your best work.
No, I agree.
And it isn't your best work. It really isn't. And you don't get the benefit of the course out of it. You don't take away those learning skills that the lecturers and the institution is looking to provide you.
Correct. And often I know our assignments, they're far too complex to be able to sit down and...
agreed.
It requires some investment of your time, and then sit back, reflect, let it sink in, do it again. Yep. Quite often I'll sit down to do something associated with my assignments and it just doesn't click, doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Okay, stop, put that down, reflect, go back to it tomorrow.
Yes, that works really well.
Yeah.
See, Remy and I had a regime going with time management. And at the first week of each semester, we'd actually sit down and clean off a whiteboard and then map out the whiteboard, and we'd get all our assignments and all our quizzes and all our exams that we need to do, and the dates, what class they were, the dates they were due.
Yep.
And then that was the column we had running down one end of the board. Then next to that, we then went in and set our own dates for when we wanted them ready.
Yep.
And essentially we just went one after the other, boom, 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 and just worked through them one after the other, regardless of what the due dates were. So like you started 3 weeks prior to on an assignment, it's not due for 3 weeks, we would do that and usually have that signed, sealed and delivered ready for submission 2 and 3 weeks ahead of schedule.
Yep. Yeah,
and then as soon as that was done, we'd launch into the next one, regardless of where we were in the class and things along those lines. And as you went through classes leading up to the submission period, if you learnt more things and more things come to light in those classes and in your study around that, you went back in and quickly made adjustments to your assignment, and then that went in. But it provided us a lot better result, and we were on top of it because it was chaos.
Yep. And that aligns with, your typical goal setting strategies and protocols where you're bringing it back to a smaller goal.
Yep.
And I like the analogy of the marathon runner, that they're not, if they're thinking about the end of the 42 kilometres at the start of the race, it can be very overwhelming.
Okay.
But if they can focus on that tree that's 100 metres in front of them, get to that tree, then set a new goal and break it down.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, so that's right, because they are strategic, aren't they?
That's right. And, you can apply that theory to a lot of other concepts related to goal setting. But with you're doing a 4-year degree, you can't. It's very overwhelming to try and think about what you're going to do in 4 years all at the same time. So the way that you described the strategy you had with the whiteboard with your boys, brilliant.
Yep.
It's just breaking it down and making it simpler.
And there is nothing better than seeing those red ticks go through that whiteboard as the semester progresses.
Bit of a dopamine hit.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And when the semester's over and it's just ticks all over the board, and I've taken photos of it and all, I'm thinking about framing them.
Yep.
Not really, but I have taken photos. I'm not going to frame them. Anyway, mate, where'd you grow up?
Lang Warren, funnily enough. So for I suppose the listeners that don't know where that is, it's down on the outskirts of Mornington Peninsula.
Yep, Melbourne.
10 minutes from
Victoria.
From Frankston.
Yep.
Most people know Frankston for all the wrong reasons, but good place to grow up as a kid. Life was probably a little bit more innocent back then.
Yes.
Cricket in the summer, footy in the winter, ride our bikes in between.
Yep. So how did you end up down here in Gippsland?
I started my working life as a bricklayer and was doing a lot of work down around sort of the Drew and Warrigal area.
Oh, okay.
Thought, I'm working down there all the time. You could buy land around here at that time for a lot cheaper than what you could down in Frankston, and it was just a way to get in. And
was that some time ago, was it?
It was 18 years ago.
Okay, that's some time ago.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Warrigal and Druin would have been still small country towns.
They were.
Then, not the metropolises they are now.
No, we've seen a lot of change.
We have seen a lot of change down through here.
Yeah, and as you know, I've been out one of your neighbours in Yallourn North for the last 2 years. So.
Yes, indeed, in the lovely hills of Yallourn North, which is quite a picturesque little town, actually.
It is.
Nice, quiet, sweet, sleepy little hollow. Yeah, I've lived there 3 times now. I've shifted in and left and come back and left and come back.
There you go.
And all my 3 sons were born in Yallourn North. Well, they were born in the Traralgon Regional Hospital, but brought home to Yallourn North.
That's home.
So it's close to their heart too.
Yeah.
Look, we like to talk about young people here on the show quite a bit, and providing tips and things along those lines. Do you have any? Would you have an inspiring tip to give a young person entering adulthood? See that I like to talk about that transition from going from like adolescence, teenager into adulthood, and I found a lot of young people have had difficulties, spanning that gulf, so to speak. And I've been asking people who come on if they have any tips or how they handle it for better or for worse.
Yeah, well, those that knew me in my early 20s may say that I'm not the best person to be giving young people tips.
I think we're all on that wagon, Dan.
So I think the thing that springs to mind for me is just there appears to be a pressure that they've got to have it all figured out.
Yes.
And especially when we're talking about career pathways and what are you going to do with your life, and they really don't need to.
Yeah.
And I'm nearly 40. I've never really figured out what I want to do with my life, so to speak. But I've been okay. I've worked out the next step and found some purpose, and something will work for a little while, and then you outgrow. We're evolving as people all the time, and we have no obligation to be the same person as what we were 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
So
I agree, and that's how you become the best version of yourself, by exploring different avenues.
Yeah.
I know my mum used to encourage me to do anything, and I did.
Yeah. And the best way to figure out if something is for you is to go and do it and get your hands dirty and give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you try something for a few years and it's not for you, then it's nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Correct. Change tact.
Yep.
Go and explore other options. Speak to as many people as you possibly can who are doing things that you would aspire to or admire.
Absolutely.
And then just pursue those avenues somehow, some way. Doors do open up.
Yep.
And you do grow.
Yeah. And it leads into other things. And I love seeing young kids have a go and, getting in there, learning, evolving, and from that comes opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That sort of leads into my next question. If you had one piece of advice for a young person regarding leadership of their own ships or journey, so to speak, and or leadership qualities going into a career. I'd like to talk about leadership a bit.
Leadership's a good topic.
I think so.
Yeah. It's a very broad topic too. I think there's a saying that we use a lot in our family, be the change you wish to see.
Yes, fantastic.
Which I can't claim it, obviously, and I don't know where it come from, but it's a well-known quote. So I think leading by example and using that as a means of inspiring those around you, if you're going to do nothing else but that with leadership, it's not a bad place to start.
Inspiring people. That does seem to be the fundamental aspect to it. Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there in relation to what leadership actually is. But I think if you have people that will walk beside you and support you in whatever initiative that you all decide to pursue, that's a true quality of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed, we can have dictator leadership, but I don't think that's very sound. I've read a book recently on dictator leadership, and ultimately at the end of the day it ends up in people plotting against you.
Yeah. And
actually putting obstacles in your way to make sure that you do fail, so you fall and the others can take on your role. That's the ultimate consequence of dictator type, tyrannical type leadership, and leaders that actually have people walk by their side do fare a whole lot better.
Yeah,
leadership's a very interesting topic. I try to talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I think, as you say, and paying attention to the language that we use and our attitudes, personal bias and those type of things all come into it as well.
Very much. Language is very important, and I think we should be a little bit more careful with our language than we actually are. I think we're a little bit too free. We should consider what language we use, because it's quite important. Like we had a guest on very recently who used I am statements. So if you say I am like hopeless at cooking, well, you will be hopeless at cooking.
Absolutely, because you've labelled yourself as
correct.
That. Yeah.
And on the same token, if you said I am a really good cook, you would tend to pursue better skills in that area.
Yeah.
And now you can apply that to anything. I thought it was brilliant personally.
Yeah.
Just to walk when you're walking around and say, I am. He was using the experience. He's written 3 books. So for a period of time, he was stating, I am a writer. So then when he was doing other things that wasn't writing, because you have to be very disciplined and focused on writing, he would start to feel a little bit guilty about, I could be putting this time into writing because I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I thought that analogy and that use of language was brilliant.
Yeah.
Good point, Dan. That is a very good point. That's close to my heart language.
Yeah, that's all right. You continue.
Husband fatherhood. How you got 4 young ones?
Yep. So
how old?
Two stepdaughters that are 14 and 10.
Oh, yep.
And then we've got our daughter Lucy, who is 8. She's just turned 8.
Yep.
And a young boy, Leon, who's 2. So
2. Oh, yeah. You got a pretty broad. You got a broad-aged group.
They are. Yep. They're spread out. The young fella, obviously being a 2-year-old, he's a handful at the moment.
He'd have all the attention, wouldn't he?
It demands a lot of our attention, but he's got 3 big sisters that love him and adore him, and he brings a lot of joy. Yeah, brings a lot of headaches, but brings a lot of joy.
Don't we all? That's fantastic.
That's true.
So, taking on responsibility of a family, I talk about responsibility a fair bit too. That's a big responsibility for children and a wife and a family and a home. And I tend to talk a bit about young men particularly avoiding responsibility.
Yeah.
But realistically, at the end of the day, I have been advocating that once you get used to taking the responsibility on, you actually become accustomed to it, and then you can take on other responsibility, and all of a sudden your life falls together.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Yeah, I do. I think taking on responsibility too can give you purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's no bigger purpose than being responsible for, the well-being of a child.
Absolutely.
Of your own. So I don't think it's any coincidence that when I started to take on those roles, and obviously I was a step parent first.
Yes.
That sort of aligned with my sort of career pathways opening up and having more opportunities and everything starting to click in my life and with relationships and health. Once I started to have that responsibility for raising children.
You took better care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Because you had to be there.
Yep.
And because a child is so dependent, and they depend on you.
Yeah.
And I think, again, there's a lot to be said about that. I tend to wonder if young men are tending to not go down that road of having children, and young women too. There's a high propensity, a high number of women deciding not to have children nowadays, and I think it was as high as 30% in some communities.
Yeah.
And I know Jordan Peterson was stating that 80% of them will ultimately live to regret that. I don't know how accurate those figures are, but that's pretty high, really.
Yeah.
And I think young men should really have a look at the benefits of taking on the responsibility of a family and of children, and how it gives you purpose and how it gives you a foundation.
Yeah.
For building a better you.
Yeah.
I found it very, very beneficial.
I guess, and it's an individual thing, and I think there's people that choose not to have children, and that works for them, and they're set that that's the right thing, and I admire that.
Yep.
No right and wrong with life choices and decisions, but I guess just to identify the limitations with what we were sort of both alluding to, the responsibility and, the giving the purpose with having children to look after, we still need to at some stage be doing that for ourselves and nobody else.
Yes.
And because that can really help us with discipline when you're doing it for ourselves. If, I'll use the example of stopping drinking alcohol, which is the thing that a lot of fathers might grapple with from at various stages throughout their life. If they're just doing it for their kids, at some point the kids are going to grow up and move out.
Yep.
Sometimes the kids are in bed. Sometimes the dad might be away. They can have a drink and the kids won't know.
Yep.
But if they're doing it for themselves and they go in, have a drink, then that they know.
Yeah.
Right, it's for themselves. So I think we do need to find that sense of purpose within internally and not be doing it for other people all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. It does have to be a bit of a inner journey and why you're doing it for. I had a conversation with my son not so long ago. He's 25, and I was saying that I was going to look after my health and go to gym and do all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he can actually enjoy being a 25-year-old and not have to worry about his father.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to worry about, I'm drinking too much, I'm not sleeping enough, or I'm not, whatever, not eating properly, and things along those lines. So I was trying to show him how through my actions I'm taking responsibility for myself and the benefit to him that he's not even realising.
Mm.
He really resonated with that. He went, wow, that's amazing. And because he hasn't had to worry about me. And I have witnessed a lot of children who have gone, mum goes out in the car and I'm worried all the time and, that sort of stuff. And they're not eating properly and dad's not eating properly. He drinks far too much and, and smokes or whatever. So that actually the child, as they grow and mature, take on that parenting role.
Yeah.
Right? And the parent takes on that child role.
They call that the sandwich generation where you're young kids and parents that you're worried about. That's what perhaps I'm moving into now.
Yeah. I think we have to go through the whole experience, but I think once you take responsibility for yourself, your children don't have to worry about that. And as I said, Rev's really
that's
resonated
great
with
insight.
it.
No, and I know you've actually gone to extraordinary lengths with that, with going to study at university with your sons, which I think I've said to you before in our private conversations that. I really admire that.
Thank you. Yeah,
that's a rare life experience. There's not too many. I don't think. Have you ever met somebody else that's done that and gone through a university degree with their child?
No. The lecturers had stated that there had been occasions when they'd experienced that before, and I think it was with mothers and daughters.
Yeah.
One lecturer said they had experienced it before. But it was a rarity, yeah, and it was the most wonderful experience, a wonderful experience. Not only did I get to sit in class with Remy and we study the exact same topics and subjects and achieve the same goals. My other two sons, they did Bachelor of Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and even with those guys, they had assignments that we all got together with and we helped each other out on as well. And so, therefore, our language and discourse and connection strengthened. They didn't grow away from me. We actually grew together. That was part of the strategy behind it because Dad was playing tricks on the boys again, as he did. I thought, well, this would be really good. Well, throughout their childhood, I'd always sat down with them to try and relate to them. So we sat down and did, Thomas the Tank Engine, and we did that, built blocks and red breeders and did all that sort of stuff. And then they changed a little bit, and they were looking at things like Star Wars on the animated Star Wars on ABC. So we'd sit down and watch that, or was it Horrific Histories or Horrible Histories? So we'd sit down and go through that process too, just to maintain. So I actually had a bit of language and could speak to what they were talking about, and we could actually relate.
Yeah,
music, I did the same. And the university thing came around. I thought, well, I've always wanted to do that. I've really wanted to study. I reckon I could do that, and to maintain a connection as well. So we all had the language. So when we sat down and had dinner, we could actually understand what our lives were going on.
Connected.
And the language, yes, very much so. Yeah. And it's one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I feel a little bit guilty because I've actually now raised 3 best friends.
How good's that?
We ring each other and how you going? What's going? A day never goes by without we're touching base. What's going on and catching up for coffees and Saturdays and where are you? You've been away for too long and things along those lines. And the one of the beautiful aspects of it, if there's a crisis, whatever that may be, we all come together and function very well.
It's brilliant. And
we had a situation that rose its ugly head a few weeks ago. Not bad. It was just a bit of a journey down to Melbourne, But we all come together and solve that problem without too much further ado and too much fallout.
Yeah.
So that is if that's the one benefit, I'm very happy with that. We went out for a 25th birthday for my son, as I mentioned the other day. Just prior. It was about 2 Fridays ago. And I did realise that we were all out and we went and had Jelani's when it was all over and dinner and things along those lines. And I was just standing back observing and everyone was laughing and joking and relaxed and having a great time and, real belly laugh and I don't even know what the conversation was about, but I just all of a sudden dawned on me that everyone's getting on. There was no backbiting, there was no animosity, there's no you owe me $10.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that. So I was a bit happy about that, and thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
I'm a bit shy about that, but anyway, that was a really good experience, and I recommend it to you. I recommend it to you. If you're in a situation where and your children are going to look like they're going to enter into something, something big in their life, and you have the opportunity, I would fully recommend you change tact and actually go and do it with them, because they do grow up and they do go into their own lives and they do disappear.
Yeah.
So then you're trying to catch them. I know that the older my 3 older boys get, because luckily I've got a stepson at home. I know right where he is. But the 3 older boys, as their lives start to pick up momentum, they're harder and harder to catch.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's even like rounding up cats. But I'm pretty persistent. Anyway, that's really good. And I want to advocate marriage quite a bit on the show as well, because I think in research that I had done in university that we're a society that's starting to err on the side of cohabitation as opposed to marriage. And I wonder if that's because we're losing a bit of faith in faith or people are a little bit concerned about committing. What do you think?
It's an interesting concept. So cohabitation, just define that for me.
Cohabitation, de facto relationships, living together without any sort of contract or any sort of contract really, because a marriage is contract before God, really.
Yeah, so that's a little bit more of an open relationship as opposed to marriage.
Well, people are still go and rent out a property, live together, even go and have children and live long partnerships together.
Yeah,
that's considered cohabitation, and some people are really really comfortable with that.
Yeah,
and because I've done both in the past. And I've found marriage to be the best and a lot more committed and a lot more settled, and there's just something about it that has really nailed one foot down to the ground, so to speak. I use that as a metaphor, but I use that as a fond metaphor because I enjoy that. I really like that aspect. There's a foundation to it.
Yeah, and my experiences align with what you've described, but I think what we'll see and how soon this starts to develop and evolve, I don't know, but we're going to see more free thinking and different solutions to different problems. And I think that the housing market becoming more unattainable might lend itself to things like, generations moving in together or multiple adults to try and alleviate the stressful symptoms of trying to pay a mortgage. I think people are going to be open to different ideas. I'm going to see multiple ideas at play with people making their life work and being able to house themselves and feed themselves and still live their lives.
That's a really good point, Dan, because they never considered the economic factors and how that's going to consequently impact on families, and it will.
Yep,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
because it is getting a little bit more difficult. Mate, Rooster Tours. Would you unpack that for us and what that's about? I think that's a wonderful service. By the way, you've done very, very well. I've been following Rooster Tours now for a number of years, actually, since I first met you, which I think is about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And it was you were in Druin at the time, I think.
I would have been
3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
yes,
would have been right.
And I think it's a wonderful service. Would you like to unpack that for a second for us?
I can a little bit. So essentially it started as an outdoor fitness option for people. So it started in the middle of COVID. My background was in the fitness industry, so I was doing a lot of personal training at the time. Through COVID, most of us are aware that the gym shut down. So we had to come up with another way to service our clients. We started to take them out kayaking and fishing and mountain bike riding and doing these sorts of things. And after doing a little bit of it, I thought this is actually pretty effective, and especially with disengaged youth. As a means, sometimes it was a way of giving them what they want or giving them what they need wrapped in what they want.
Yep.
So you might say, look, we can do whatever activity you want. But for us, that was a distraction to start to identify and unpack some other areas in their life that they needed help with.
Yep.
So it was a really effective way for engaging disengaged youth. But we sort of started to service all ages.
Yep.
All ages, and work with intellectual disabilities, complex mental health conditions, some physical disabilities.
Yep.
And it's continued to evolve. I think we've been going a little over 3 years now. And it's continued to evolve as we've brought different skill sets within the business and different people with different strengths.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's evolving, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that it's very much a horses for courses approach. We have new customers and new NDIS participants come into our system, and we try and pair them up with one of our support workers that is going to best fit their goals and their plans and what they need assistance with in their daily life. So it's been a big learning curve. There's been a lot of adjustments. Yeah, we've had some really good people in the business that have helped so much, and being able to get Rooster Tours to where it is now. And there's still problems that arise that we solve together as a team that perhaps sometimes they're beyond me. But we've been able to lean on, our administration team and develop those networks around us that can help us with insight and knowledge to work around that. So,
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a great service.
Yeah, it is. And we see, I guess, the benefit that our customers get out of it, and our staff enjoying going to work. So that's the driver for us.
Yeah, well, having staff enjoy going to work, and that promotes ownership, and therefore you get a lot more creativity, and creativity would be essential in a service such as Rooster Tours. Would I be correct?
Absolutely. Yep. In innovation and being able to think out the box as to how you're going to help that person. Especially sometimes there's language barriers, and there's intellectual barriers, and the way that they can articulate their needs.
Yep.
So really learning to identify non-verbal cues. And pick up on patterns that might be emerging. There's a lot of you really need to be an effective support worker. You need to know a little bit about a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Not necessarily
That's
being
a good description.
not necessarily being expert in anything, but you got to have a sort of a broad knowledge base.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right across the board.
Yep.
Know a little bit
Absolutely.
about a lot.
And then accept that every time you're assigned a new customer, that you're back to square one. You got to learn about this person and their needs, and forget about everything else you've learnt, because we haven't met two that are the same yet.
Yeah, I bet. There'd be a lot of unique needs to be met there, certainly. Now, you're doing a course at the moment. I'd really like to have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing that for a while now.
Yeah, so the beginning, that would have been when I met you, because I remember some advice that you gave me at the start. So the beginning of 2021, I enrolled in a Bachelor of Counseling.
Okay.
Which, as I think I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I'm at the tail end of now.
Yes, you did. Go unpack that for us, Dan.
It's funny. I still remember ringing up to inquire, and when I rang up to inquire, I was thinking, I could make some inquiries and see there might be something I'll enroll in 6 months' time or something. And I remember the lady on the phone. She wasn't even being markety or salesy. She just said, "We've got a spot open if you want to start next week."
Yep.
And I was like, and next week I got a family at work.
Yep.
And she, again, not being markety or salesy, she said, "Well, are you still going to have a family and a job in 6 months' time?" And it was like a cue to say, well, those things aren't going anywhere. If you're going to take it on, there's no perfect time to start.
Yep.
And I was 35, so not much was going to change in terms of my responsibilities or.
Yep.
So I essentially signed up there and then. And that was
fantastic.
Yeah,
and that was nearly strapped in.
Yeah. And that was nearly 4 years ago.
Yep.
And academic study was completely foreign to me. I remember in the first couple of weeks sitting down to watch webinars on how to do a reference and how to paraphrase, and just being completely bamboozled by But then you pick things up as you go, and you talk to other students, and you. I can mention the name of the college, Australian College of Applied Professions, ACAP. Most of that have done counselling or psychology-based courses will be familiar with ACAP.
Yep.
They've been brilliant. So there's an answer to everything. Sometimes you've got to dig for it, and sometimes you've got to send some emails and be patient. But there's always a solution.
Good.
So where I go with that in the future, I haven't got my heart set on anything. I'm just enjoying being a student at the moment and learning and adapting and evolving.
That's fantastic, because it does come to a close,
That's right. And
it does come to a fruition.
I'm through 20 modules, so I've just got
not long to go
placement, which has been arranged for next year.
That's 2 modules?
It is 2.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Oh, geez, you're right at the thin edge of the wedge. It's getting
Yeah.
exciting there. You can smell the winner's podium.
It's funny to think that, because I still feel like there's a bit of a journey in front of me. But when you look at it from the context that I've been going for 4 years and I've only got another 6 months, then you're right. Like there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely, there is. And I've taken a bit of a new motto, is to do something that's hard. Mm-hmm. I've found when you take things on that's hard, it's very rewarding. It actually gives you, again, focus, and it gives you purpose and things along those lines. And you feel fantastic when you've achieved it.
Yeah.
You'll feel wonderful when you're done.
Yeah. And there's been so many, I guess, indirect benefits and learnings along the way, even with it, neuroplasticity. So I now believe that, because it was something I viewed as impossible for me to do that.
Yep.
So once you can accomplish something that you viewed as impossible, it starts to think, well, what else? What else could I learn?
The sky is the limit.
Yeah. So being able to learn complex tasks now that are not associated with my study, I find much easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny that, and I noticed that my articulation and language picked up exponentially.
Yeah.
Reading skills, interpretation skills, things along those lines just went out of sight, because I did leave school at the end of what they used to call the end of first term, Form 3, which is our grade 9.
Yep.
That's when I left school.
Yep.
So it was very daunting, although I had been back a couple of times for a few certificates and diplomas and things along those lines, but a big course like psychology, that was a bit daunting.
Yep.
So I can sympathise and empathise with you with the first week's of study. Good Lord.
And I guess just to obviously I started with one module, just doing one module at a time.
Yep.
I'm now doing 3 modules, but I'm actually doing the 3 modules with less stress than what I was doing one module at the start.
Yep.
So you do, you learn coping strategies, you become more efficient.
Yes.
You know when to pay attention and when
not.
you can relax a bit. Yes.
You can too.
Reading a research paper, you know which bits you can sort of just scroll through. And,
quickly.
Yep.
Talk to your colleagues, network.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now were you doing something on addiction?
Yeah, we're studying addictive behaviours at the moment, and that's probably the module that's resonated with me the most in terms of own personal life experiences and observations of the community and my work with Rooster Tours. So I've enjoyed that module, and ended up, when you enjoy something so much, you end up going down a lot of rabbit holes and perhaps spending a lot more time on study-related tasks that you don't need to be, but
that's correct.
You're doing it out of interest.
That's correct. You can lose focus very easily, but that's the benefit of it, and that's what opens up your horizons, and that's what opens up your vocabulary, and that's what opens up a whole range of things when you do that.
Yeah.
I suffer that greatly. Yeah. I mean greatly. I'm trying to write a couple of thousand words out on something, and I'm just off down a rabbit hole on some study on something totally irrelevant. Yeah. And you have to catch yourself and pull yourself up and get back to work.
Yeah, just read the question again, and does it relate to that or not?
Yeah, that's right. I've been there. I've done that. Addictive behaviours. Now, is that generalised addictive behaviours right across the board, or specifically behaviours around, say, drug and alcohol? Or
it's looking at it as a broad concept.
Yep.
And the biopsychosocial impacts of, so it goes substance use versus behavioural based addictions.
Yes.
So I suppose to describe that in more detail, substance use, we're referring to alcohol and other drugs.
Yes.
Behavioural, we're referring to things like gambling, gaming, social media use.
Yep.
That type of thing so behavioural use, behavioural addiction, there will be no real physical signs of the addiction.
Yep.
Substance use, a little bit different, and there's obviously a chemical component to it where there's the chemical hook and that type of thing.
Yeah, which is very different.
Yeah.
It's funny, addiction has come up in some of my research too, and it's prevalent in just about every aspect of our lives. I just went through a personal realisation of a personal addiction to sugar recently.
Yep.
Now, something as simple as sugar, I discovered that I was quite addicted to it.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, I think maybe all of us are addicted to sugar, which opened up a whole range of other things which I've been scratching the surface of just gently around being addicted to your traumatic experience, being addicted to being a victim, being addicted to other behaviours, attention seeking.
Yeah.
There's a whole range of addictions that we're not really used to. And how do you define addiction from on a linear scale? Can you be a little bit addicted, or can you be greatly addicted, or is addicted just addicted? You would probably be better one to answer that.
Yeah.
Is there a chronological style where you're a little bit?
I think if we want a definition of what actually defines addiction, it's when it starts to impact
on your life,
or you're spending more time either pursuing the behaviour, or engaging with the behaviour.
Yep.
It's starting to impact relationships, starting to impact the time you have to spend on your hobbies and the things that give you life enhancement and fulfilment.
Yep. If you're substituting those hobbies and activities of life fulfilment, that can be defined as addiction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The difficult thing is often when we're in the grips of addiction, we don't have the self-awareness to identify that.
Yes. Particularly if it's a substance-based one, drugs and alcohol.
Yep.
Okay, because you lose reason.
Yep.
And reduces your inhibitions.
Yeah. So my fascination with it lies with the social side of it and the social conditioning side of it.
Yep.
There's an interesting paper I was looking at the other day social anxiety and alcohol use sort of go hand in hand, and it's often used as it's promoted and perhaps well known as a substance we can use to relieve symptoms of social anxiety. Would that be fair?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, 100%, yeah.
So the study was they gave the participants a placebo.
Yep.
And then got them to report on their feelings of social anxiety. So they thought they drank alcohol, but they actually hadn't.
Yep.
But they reported lower levels of
social anxiety.
So that brings it back to me. And if you look at the known effects of alcohol consumption, where there's loss of coordination, there's lapses in memory, slurred speech.
Yep. Sense of euphoria.
Yep. If you were to give me a pill that said, look, you're going to lose a bit of coordination, you might slur your speech, you might not remember some of the things that you said the next day, that would increase my level of social anxiety, not lower it.
Yes, it would. Absolutely.
So where does the story come from that alcohol lowers our level of social anxiety?
So, but wouldn't that come into the area of rituals, human rituals, where we get together and we celebrate? We celebrate because we have alcohol at weddings, alcohol at funerals, birthdays. It's a major part of our celebratory process.
It is. Yeah, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And I think the compound effect of having those experiences time after time after time results in the social conditioning that we see, where alcohol is just part of it's sort of ingrained in our culture and accepted.
Yes. And of course, and we spoke about affluent societies before going on air, and I'm erring on the side that being an affluent society has provided us with the ability and the means to be able to have alcohol on a regular basis.
Yeah.
More regular than if you were ploughing fields or lived in a medieval time, so to speak. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it becomes like one of the best strategies for addiction is to put a barrier in front of it. So,
Yep.
you know, for your sugar example, if you didn't have ice cream and chocolate in the house and you had to drive to the shops to get it, that's a barrier that you could put in place. We can do the same thing with alcohol. We can have, you know, there's no alcohol in the house.
Yep.
But there's a bottle shop on every corner. It's
And
so
one in between. That's correct.
It's so accessible.
Yeah, it is.
It's so accessible, and it's for someone to put a barrier in between themselves and the alcohol, it can be really challenging and really limited in its impact because if they drive to work, they've got to drive past 3 bottle shops on their way home.
Correct. And of course, with all the advertising and all the pretty lights and bells and whistles, they're visual cues, which are reminding, are exciting the brain, which it's a Pavlov's dog experience, really. When you drive past a big VB, round VB, green and red sign, Victorian bitter, right, on a hot summer's day.
Yep.
Well, the first thing you're thinking of is wouldn't that be wonderful? Of course, that's the visual cues. And it's all the range of cues that moves you closer and closer to what you're trying to avoid.
Activating the neurotransmitters in the brain.
Correct. All the reward, dopamines, and correct.
So to even with sort of the lesser known, like illicit drug use, it might be easier to remove that in terms of visual cues and prompts by changing your environment. But with alcohol, it's much harder to do because it's so in our face.
Yes,
so to speak.
correct, and acceptable.
Yep,
and harmless.
Apparently,
but it's the most injury-inducing drug we have.
Yeah,
you know, I was doing a bit of research, and they were stating in that research, I can't recall what it was, that if we banned alcohol and got rid of it, sexual assault would almost disappear.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yep.
That means a whole human behaviour, a negative behaviour too, I might add, is based on consumption of alcohol. They said murder rates would drop significantly, so would assault.
Yeah.
So because I think there's some crazy statistics. 50% of all murder victims are drunk. And I think it was 55 or something % of murderers, people who perpetrate murder, are drunk.
Yep.
Like the alcohol plays a major role in all those activities. And of course, if you go and speak to anybody in an emergency ward, they will tell you a litany of stories on people arriving due to some sort of injury after consuming copious amounts of alcohol, particularly around grand final time.
Yes. I think I read a stat on that the other day that there was just behind Christmas Day, it was the most call-outs for family violence was Christmas AFL Day. Grand Final Day. And I don't know whether that was isolated to Victoria or it was nationwide. But
wow.
It's a big statistic, and it's a day that we culturally we associate with binge drinking.
Yes, absolutely. Food, wine, women and song. Yeah. Well, that's not Christmas Day. That's every Saturday night for most young blokes, I think. But look, that's fantastic, mate. How would people find you if they were looking around for Rooster Tours or something along those lines? Do you have social medias or things along those lines?
We do have social medias, so you can follow Rooster Tours on social media and Instagram. We've also got my wife started up a sound bowl meditation studio called Rock Your Mind, so you can find Rock Your Mind through Facebook and Instagram.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be, I can't wait to get up and have a look at that.
No, we'll have to get you over.
And that would be
mesmerised by the sound bowls.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the pictures on Facebook, and that is tremendous. So, yeah, good luck with that. That's some really good stuff coming our way.
Right. She's done well.
Mate, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Noel.
I hope it hasn't been too painful.
No, it's been fun, and I hope that there's some people out there that can resonate with what we've had to say today.
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure it'll generate quite a bit of interest. If you'd like to find us, you can find us on Spotify or YouTube or on the normal social media sites, Facebook and things along those lines. You take care. Dan, thank you very much for coming in, mate. I truly, honestly want to convey that to you. It's great. And maybe I'll put you on the spot here while we're recording. is there any chance maybe getting you back in a few months' time and have a sit down and chat about something, maybe about how the study's going and how you've completed that and how you feel after that?
I would love to be having that conversation.
That'd be a great, and you will certainly be in position to have that conversation with conviction, because it all comes to a close. And it's funny, I know I've been through that experience, and then there's a bit of dead air at the end of it. And you wonder, well, this is fantastic. But when the euphoria of that goes away, you go, oh, well, I should be doing something. Yep. Anyway, I think we all crossed that bridge. Dan, thank you very much. And thank you to all you people out there too. Hope you enjoy. Have a great day. Bye-bye.